Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Maddie here, and it's Friday, so we're going to be doing the best decks for ranked battles. Going into this first week, we have a very short ranked season here for Mega Rising. It's literally only 2 weeks long. At this point, Mega Rising's been out for like a month, so, we've kind of figured a lot out. And I would say that the metagame right now is very condensed. So I think a lot of the decks that we're going to be talking about in today's video are decks you're likely familiar with, but these might be some updated lists that you guys can take and utilize in ranked mode. For reference, I have played about 75 games of ranked battles so far since the season has been released, and I've been operating around a 62 to 63% win rate. So it's been going fairly well. If you guys caught my live stream, yesterday night, I believe it was, or no, Wednesday night, we popped off and we were like the 9th person to make it into ranked, which is pretty funny. So I took a little screenshot of us being in top 10 because that'll never happen again. But anyway, let's dive right into it. But before we do that, you got to go register for Pocket Mad's Pocket Tournament number 10. It's going to be a smaller tournament now that ranked battles are out. It's also holiday season, but we do have $100 cash and a professor's research in the prize pool. I would heavily recommend that you guys go and play. And yeah, let's just dive right into the video. As you guys can see here, on the screen, it's Altaria. Now, I think that there's really, it's tough to say. I think there's really two strong decks right now that are kind of defining the ranked metagame. The first one and the most important one, definitely, I would say, is Mega Altaria. And the reason for that is because this is definitely the most popular deck that you'll see in ranked battles right now, but for good reason. It's massively consistent and very, very, very strong. The reason why I'm going to lead off this video talking about Mega Altaria is not only because it is the most popular deck, but because I think it's the easiest deck to play. In terms of its overall kind of flow. It makes a lot of sense. There's not a lot of plays that you make with this deck that just don't really make a ton of sense, right? It just, everything sort of flows naturally. It's a very easy deck to understand. You want to go second, you want to get Altaria out turn 2, and you want to start swinging. Very, very strong deck list here. The one thing, or I guess not one thing, but the couple of things here that really stand out to me right now in ranked is this one copy of Indeedee. I think Indeedee is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of your primary win conditions for so many games. It kind of brings Mega Altaria up from like 190 HP to theoretically 210 HP, and it allows you to live 2 attacks most of the time from a Greninja EX, which is definitely pretty relevant. But other than that, I should say, Chingling is very important, and Chingling to me, I think, is still a great option, especially in ranked. So many other decks, basically every other deck at the top of the metagame that's not Mega Altaria is playing rare candy. So Chingling, I still think, is a really, really strong option. I still like Star Drop Jirachi, even though I think in a lot of matchups it's not the most useful thing in the world. It is a very, very good option to have, and we need Pokemon to fill our bench. So not much else I can really say about Mega Altaria. This would be my #1 recommendation to most people, just because it's consistent and I think it's easy to play. Compared to the other decks, I think it's easiest to play. Some things to take a note of here: 1 copycat, double Lycia. So the main reason I do like this version of Mega Altaria is that it's, again, extra consistent because we can use this Lycia package to basically fill our bench and thin out our deck. It's really, really strong. There's an alternate version of Altaria, which we'll cover next, but I do think that this version is kind of the standard. It's sort of the version that most people are playing, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Double Rocky Helmet. Mars is really important. In fact, I almost considered playing double copies of Mars in this deck just because, like, the Chingling lock into Suicune and Greninja I think is really important, but most of the time it actually doesn't end up helping at all unless you have Mars, because their hand just piles up. So unless we can Mars them, stalling for that 2, 3, 4 turns really doesn't help you at all. So I really like this deck list, but to be fair, I think its matchups into Suicune and Greninja actually are a bit of a struggle. My cat is climbing onto my desk right now, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, either way, this is a deck list that is beating basically everything in the game other than Suicune and Greninja, which is something that we're definitely going to talk about because that's the deck that I've been playing. This is the most popular deck right now in ranked battles. The alternate version. For a couple of these top decks, I'm going to have like alternate versions. So if you wanted to play, Mega Altaria, but something a little bit different, this is the version I would recommend, which is not playing Jirachi or Chingling or Lycia. We're playing double Indeedee and double Giratina. And this is a deck list to me that I think is a little bit more straightforward. And since we're not playing Lycia, we're kind of reliant on Pokeballs, but we can play like 1 copy of May, or if you wanted to, you could swap that May for a copycat. I really like this deck. Double Indeedee is definitely a really, really big deal here. And if you lead Giratina, the double Indeedee also keeps it alive for that much longer. I think that this is in general a really strong deck in its own right. But I think that you're going to miss the Chingling lock a little bit. There's a lot of, Greninja rare candy. There's a lot of Blaziken rare candy, a lot of Hydreigon rare candy, right? Those are the other top decks. So I do think Altaria benefits a lot from Chingling, but as we've kind of seen seen right now, without Mars, the Chingling lock isn't helping too much. We are seeing one Sabrina, one Cyrus in most decks right now. The only exception to that is likely going to be Suicune and Greninja, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, this is just an alternate version, and I like this version because sometimes it's nice to force your opponent to go through, you know, a Giratina EX and an Indeedee EX, or, you know, an Indeedee and then a Mega Altaria, or just 2 Altarias, whatever the combo is. It's a little bit more in line. We're playing 2 prizers with a 3 prizer. The other version is a little bit more reliant on not getting Cyrused, which, you know, definitely does happen. So a deck list like this maybe can carry its own without having to bounce between multiple Mega Altarias, which is kind of the win condition oftentimes for the other version of the deck. But yeah, Mega Altaria, it's the most popular deck in the game right now, one of the most consistent. Of course, it's that Genetic Apex Pikachu comparison for this new era of Pokemon Pocket, and as we know, Genetic Apex Pikachu back in the day was very, very, very good. I don't really have anything else to say about these decks. Like I said, they're very, very good, but they've been struggling. From a win rate perspective, this is a deck that struggles into Suicune Greninja, specifically Greninja EX. We'll get into that here next. But other than that matchup, I really like this deck, and again, it's very popular. So moving on is going to be Greninja EX and Suicune. Now, the reason why I called it Greninja EX and Suicune is because this is technically a very different deck than any deck that might be playing 2 Suicune and then 2 Water Shuriken Greninja. The difference here is that we don't have to play, you know, more basic Pokemon. This is a deck that only plays 4 basic Pokemon, which would inherently make the damage output from Crystal Waltz, Suicune EX's attack, a little bit less consistent, just because we might not always have a full bench. But that's totally fine, because when you're playing this deck list, most of the time we're committing energies to the Froakie, because Greninja EX is actually our primary attacking option, and Suicune's really just there to soak up damage in the active spot and, you know, effectively just draw cards for us. There are some scenarios where, you know, having Suicune EX as a secondary attacking option, of course, is very valuable. Of course, even if we don't get our second Froakie or the second Greninja online. What I really like about this deck specifically is that it handles the Chingling lock pretty fine, even without Frogadier. And you might be asking, like, where is the Frogadier, the middle evolution to Froakie? In my opinion, you really don't need it. And the reason why I say that is because it just doesn't really matter if you're going up against Chingling. Because if you're going second, we're just going to survive long enough. There's enough games where, like, literally, if you're going second, you can just, and you lead Froakie, that is, you can just attach to Froakie, retreat into Suicune, and then just wait. And then you just wait, because you're going to soak up damage between Giant Capes and double Irida. You're going to be able to survive for quite some time. You also might be curious about, like, Indeedee, because there's definitely been some variants of Suicune and Greninja playing Indeedee, which to me is kind of the more proper replacement for Giratina if you were going to play a more traditional version of Suicune and Greninja, but that's going to be the alternate that we talk about. This deck list to me has it all. The only matchups that I don't love when I'm playing this deck are Magnezone and Oricorio, which isn't very popular right now, at least higher up in the Master Ball tier, which, you know, we'll talk about later in this video, because I do think it's really, really strong. And even Blaziken Heatmor seems to be a worse matchup for this deck list than even Altaria or Absol. This is a deck that is specifically built to beat, you know, Absol decks with Hydreigon and Altaria. And my win rate against both of those decks have probably been 60% or higher, in my opinion. And it's my favorite deck to play right now. I know a lot of people were kind of clowning on me for playing Suicune and Greninja to start the season, but the thing is that I knew this wouldn't be the most popular deck this season. I knew Altaria would be the most common deck. So I know people look at this and they think, oh, it's Suicune Greninja, how original, how fun, how basic. But to be fair, this deck is almost entirely different in terms of how it plays than what Suicune and Greninja was previously in previous seasons, or even at the beginning of this season. This is a completely different deck list. And you might be like, oh, it's completely different, Maddie. Is it really? It is. It literally plays extremely differently. Suicune EX oftentimes isn't the Pokemon we're attaching to. It's not what we attack with. And the deck just is completely different. It just operates differently. This deck is playing double Cyrus. Now, again, there are some things we could swap around here. I do think it's non-negotiable that we should be playing at least 1 Cyrus and double Giant Cape. I really like Giant Cape. It helps so much in so many different scenarios, specifically against Blaziken, but also going to be really good into, like, Hydreigon and Absol and things like that. Double Irida I also really, really like. So you could cut 1 Irida if you wanted to play an Indeedee EX. You could also maybe cut that the 1 copy of Irida to play Frogadier if you did like Frogadier. I'm just not a big believer in Frogadier, but, like, in my own right. I just don't think it's actually that good of a Pokemon. Now, there are some scenarios if you're playing the new Frogadier and you do go second, you can get 2 energies onto it and then 1-hit KO the Chingling in the active while retreating in the same vein. But a lot of the times, Chingling actually has a Rocky Helmet attached, and you're better off just not attaching or not attacking to it. And the Giant Capes and the Iridas with Suicune in the active basically is just an auto win scenario there. yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of different ways that you can play Greninja EX, but it's sort of my favorite version right now, and I think it's actually the best choice right now, realistically, with so much Altaria and Absol seeing play in ranked battles. And I think it's just a unique opportunity to be playing a deck list like this. Operates very differently from like a different variant, which is going to be this, and this is what I would call Suicune EX and Greninja, right? So we're only playing one copy of the Shifting Stream Greninja, and we are playing 2 copies of Water Shuriken. And because we're playing, of course, less copies of Greninja EX, our primary attacking Pokemon will be Suicune in this version, which is why we're adding one additional basic Pokemon being Indeedee. And again, I do think that Indeedee helps a ton with this deck list. The main upside to playing Greninja EX, realistically, is that you don't have to commit energies to the active. It solves the issue that Suicune had forever in the previous seasons, which was like sometimes you just went first and led Froakie, and then you just couldn't really do anything unless you like drew into your 1 copy of Leaf or your inflatable boat. Greninja EX fixes that, and that's sort of the main consistency problem with Suicune, which is why I personally like playing double copies of Greninja EX. But this is still a very, very strong deck list. This list here only plays 1 Irida in 1 Giant Cape with double Cyrus. I think double Cyrus makes more sense if you're playing double Water Shuriken Greninja. I like only 1 copy of Cyrus in like a version like this, but these are just example sort of baseline versions of these deck lists. But yeah, to be 100% honest with you, this deck here, even though it looks very similar to this deck, plays very, very differently, right? I would say most of the games you're going to be committing your energies to Suicune if you're playing this deck list, whereas if you're playing this deck, you might commit early energies to Froakie, and it's important to know how to play the decks differently. Personally, right now, I like double Greninja EX a little bit more, and I think that extra HP comes extremely relevant. It almost allows you to auto-win against Absol, which is, to be fair, absolutely broken. But anyway, 2 different versions of the deck, depending on which one you like better. You know, for me, I'm sort of in the counter playing Altaria mode. That's sort of the vein that I'm in right now, and most of my matchups are against Altaria, and it's, I think, why my win rate's been so high in ranked. And that's sort of the vibes right now. I think things are definitely prone to shift. Maybe after this video, or as, you know, the week goes on, because we only have 2 weeks of the season, maybe more people end up playing Suicune and Greninja EX. I don't know. I think Altaria will likely continue to be the most popular deck, because I think most people understand that it's kind of the top dog of the metagame. But when you take a look at tournament meta and tournament results, what you'll see is Suicune Greninja is absolutely dominating right now, and it's because people haven't really shifted to counterplaying this deck, you know, at least at this point in the season, right? And there's really only one deck that I think hard beats this deck more consistently. That's going to be Magnezone and Oricorio, and I really do believe that. So either way, this is going to be my top. This is actually technically my top option right now, but either version is going to be really good. And again, I just don't think the meta is really counterplaying either of these decks very heavily right now, so I would recommend Suicune and Greninja above anything else. Now, the other most popular deck, which we'll get to in a little bit, but before we do that, we got to let you guys know that only 47% of you guys that are watching my videos are subscribed. This month has been great from YouTube. We've gained a ton of subscribers. We're over 41,000 right now, but taking a look at the data, we could have a lot more subscribers. I know there's a ton of people that watch my videos. They get informed. They take a look at the deck lists, and they kind of, you know, they operate inside the community, but they might not be subscribed to the channel. That's where I would heavily recommend that you hit that subscribe button. It helps me a lot. It supports me. It supports the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. So there you go. Pretty staggering. 52% of people are not subscribed. Kind of crazy, actually. But next up, we're going to talk about Hydreigon Absol. This to me is sort of the potentially the second most played deck in ranked. I mean, I've seen a lot of Hydreigon, and it's a lot better in ranked actually than I kind of give it credit for. I kind of forgot how much win streaks really do matter, and really kind of add up to you know, allowing you to climb in ranked battles. Hydreigon to me is broken. This is such a strong deck, such a strong Pokemon. This is kind of the version of the deck that I'm seeing the most of. Some versions aren't playing Chingling, and I think that's fine. Again, we're not playing any middle evolution here, and we're playing Chingling. So if you wanted to cut Chingling for, you know, a Zweilous, or is that what it's called? I forget what the middle evolution for Hydreigon is, but you could cut the Chingling, play the middle evolution, but 1 Mega Absol, 1 Absol, Leap over Absol, I think is proper. And this is a really, really strong deck. It just is. I don't have any problems with it when I'm playing Greninja EX personally, just because like double giant capes and stuff, like we're just living attacks from Hydreigon. And the thing is, like 100 damage from Greninja really adds up, because realistically speaking, if they don't have have Pokemon Center Lady, even if they attack you, if they roar in unison, they go down to 120. If we hit them for 100 with Greninja EX, then they can't attack again. They either have to roar in unison and KO themselves, or they just don't do anything, and that basically wins you the game. And Greninja EX has a ton of HP. So again, just another deck list that kind of struggles into Greninja for whatever the reason. But the thing about Hydreigon is that you can go turn 2 going first, roar in unison, Hyper Ray. And that's the main benefit with this. I think that the two decks that we've talked about before, or at the beginning of this video, being Greninja EX and Suicune and Altaria, those are going second decks. Those are decks that are absolutely ridiculous going second, but they do have their struggles going first. Hydreigon is a bit of a high roll deck, but it's also very good going first sometimes, and that's the inherent benefit to this deck list. I like a lot of different things here going first. Mega Absol is still strong, but again, Greninja EX is something that's going to basically just hard wall Mega Absol, because with Giant Cape, with Indeedee, with with Irida, like you're not 2-hit KOing a Greninja EX, and that just feels really bad, and it's kind of the main reason why you end up losing the game. But I still love this deck. It really wouldn't be high up on my recommendations compared to Greninja EX or Altaria. But I know people love playing Dark right now in this season. We have a lot of really cool Dark type cards, right? I mean, Mega Absol super cool. Hydreigon is really, really cool. In tournament play, I think this deck does really well because, again, it's a high roll deck. And I think that it does translate a little bit over to ranked, but maybe not as hard as sort of Altaria and Suicune do. I think they translate over to ranked perfectly. Whereas this is a deck list where you might pop off, go on some big win streaks, which of course is really good, but you're probably going to lose a lot of games in a row just by bricking. And this is a deck that definitely relies a little bit more on luck and drawing that rare candy combo out. However, Copycat is broken. And to be fair, if you're playing a lot of Suicune and Greninja, you're going to get some big copycats and it's going to feel absolutely incredible. So I really do like this deck. And that's why I'm kind of putting it here as sort of my number 3rd archetype here on the video. But again, I really think there's a pretty clear separation between Altaria and Suicune and really all of the other decks. Currently right now, there's a bunch of Absol variants, but I don't think any of them are really as worth playing as Hydreigon right now. That's just my opinion. I mean, you could play Naganadel, you could play Quad Absol. There's a lot of different things you could play, but in general, I think the damage output from Hydreigon is a little bit more needed currently right now. But yeah, it's still a good deck list. We had to recommend it. You might be wondering, like, what is the difference between ranked meta and tournament meta game? If you really want to know, the truth is literally nothing. Like the top decks that people are playing in ranked are the exact decks that are at the top of tournament play. There's just no difference. And people love to argue that. They love to be like, oh, it's a different metagame. It's not. It's literally the same decks. People just take the decks that win tournaments, play them in ranked, and that's how it goes. I mean, I guess the only difference for ranked is that you could maybe slot in like one random card for your deck that people might not expect because it's not open deck list. But all you're doing is making your deck less consistent. And there might be a couple random scenarios where that one copy of Guzma or something wins you the game, but most of the time, the decks in tournament are just entirely optimal, and that's what people play. So realistically, that's where we're at. And again, the metagame is very condensed right now. That's why, to be fair, I think there's really only like 5 decks I would recommend. We do have a wild card this week, but it's not something I would necessarily put too much stock into. Either way, here's Hydreigon. Absol, definitely, I would say kind of the 3rd or 4th best deck right now for ranked battles. Next up is going to be Blaziken. And in fact, I actually like Blaziken a little bit more right now. I got to scroll down. I like it a little bit more right now than I do some other decks. And I think the main reason for that is that in all my experience playing Suicune and Greninja, one of my least favorite matchups is in fact going to be Heatmor Blaziken. I really don't love this this matchup for Suicune really at all. You're reliant on drawing Giant Capes, and I think that Indeedee can help a little bit, but for the most part, like going first into this matchup feels not great. I really do like Mega Blaziken. I don't know if I can recommend it as highly as Suicune, Greninja, or Altaria, but it's the other high roll deck of the meta right now. So depending on how you want to play your decks, or which sort of type of deck you want to play, I think that Hydreigon and Mega Blaziken are both very comparable. They can just pop off and kind of explode on your opponent. That sounded weird. You can just pop off and just kind of, go nuts early in the game and then, kind of carry that throughout the game. They're high roll decks. So that's the main difference here. And again, you have to take a look at your matchups into Suicune, Greninja, Altaria, and Absol, because those are the 3 decks right now that are kind of driving the metagame. And I think that Blaziken uniquely does fairly well into a lot of those matchups, but it tends to struggle against, it tends to struggle a little bit into the dark and psychic type matchups, but it actually does pretty well into Suicune and Greninja. I don't have anything else to really say about it other than that this is a pretty standard list that most people are playing right now. This is the deck that's actually not playing Lily. We're playing Guzma in place of Lily, which is very interesting, but at the same time, I think it's really, really smart. I think that, Lily in the deck is something that I sometimes flip-flop on. And the main reason for that is because we are a stage 2 Pokemon and we have 210 HP. And I think a big reason why this deck list has a little bit more potential in some matchups is because we have access to Lily, right? Most other decks that have access to Lily aren't playing it, or they just don't have access to Lily. You know what I mean? It's just sort of how it works. And I think that in general, I think that Lily can be really good in Blaziken. It's just, I don't know. It's not a deck that I've tested too much myself, but in the same vein, maybe Lily isn't that important. I don't really know. Maybe you'd rather play like Sabrina and Guzma, but to me, I feel like Lily is sort of something that can really boost this deck up in terms of its matchups into a lot of different stuff, because it's going to bring Blaziken to 270 HP. You know what I mean? But I guess a lot of decks are playing Rocky Helmet, so the math probably doesn't math very well there, because Altaria is going to hit you for, 130 twice, but with the Rocky Helmet, that's actually, like 140. It's 150, right, or whatever. So it ends up being kind of above that threshold. So maybe that's why. Maybe the Rocky Helmet stuff kind of doesn't help with that math. I don't know. Not something this isn't a deck I really play much myself. I just play against it, so I really only know the other side of the matchup, I'll be honest. But I do know it's still a good option. And again, diminishing returns as far as we go down on the tier list or down on the decks, because I think, again, very condensed. It's been a month since B1 came out. We kind of know what the best decks are. So I think Blaziken's kind of on that fringe. It's like right on the end there. But lastly, before our wild card, we're going to talk about Magnezone Oricorio, because to me, this is probably the most underrated deck right now in ranked battles. And I'm not trying to be that guy, because I've been playing Suicune and Greninja. So I'm not, I don't want to be like, oh, like everyone should play Oricorio now. You know what I mean? Like nobody really wants to play Oricorio in ranked. Like that's the reality of it. But when you take a look at the metagame, it's a lot of Altaria, it's a lot of Suicune Greninja. What deck has a good winning matchup into both of those decks? It's going to be Magnezone or Oricorio. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. It really depends. Like, yeah, we're at a weird spot. It's only been like a day or two of ranked, but like at some point we have to understand what's going on in the metagame. We can't just kind of play whatever strong deck we think we like the most, because you may or may not be at a disadvantage depending on what other decks are seeing play. And that's kind of how I feel about the meta right now in ranked, is like everyone's playing Altaria or they're playing Absol and they're just kind of getting farmed by Greninja. I don't know, but at the end of the day, I think that a lot of people should be playing Suicune and Greninja, and if more people do play Suicune and Greninja, I think more people should play Magnezone or Oricorio. Again, just from a win rate perspective, one of the few decks that can beat Suicune and beat Altaria pretty consistently. You might disagree, but the math checks out. The data that we have so far this season does check out. Magnezone or Oricorio has winning matchups into basically everything other than, you guessed it, Hydreigon. We don't want to play Hydreigon if we're playing this matchup. That's of course just how it works. Oricorio doesn't do anything in that matchup. Leap over Absol is definitely a little bit scary. So yeah, and I think that's the only thing holding Magnezone back is just like the absolute like massive amounts of people that are playing Hydreigon. I don't mind it because I'm playing Suicune Greninja right now, but that's where we're at. So depending on how the ranked meta shifts, if you see if you see less and less Absol Hydreigon as time goes on, consider playing Magnezone. But if you're seeing a ton of Hydreigon, then don't play Magnezone, obviously. So that's kind of my recommendation right now. And I think that's probably where things are going to go, truthfully. I don't know. It's hard to say because, tournament meta is different. And I think that the ranked meta does reflect the tournament meta game. Magnezone or Oricorio did win our Pocket Mats tournament just a couple of weeks ago. And I think that depending on, what popular decks are going on right now, I kind of put Magnezone in Oricorio kind of in that 4th spot. In fact, I would really consider this deck over Blaziken, if I'm being honest with you. If you're just trying to win the most amount of games. I know Oricorio can be a little bit slow, a little bit grindy. It might not be that fun, but this is a very, very, very good deck and some of the most popular decks in the metagame right now currently. So that's really all I have to say. And yeah, I mean, we talked about multiple different variants for Altaria, multiple different Greninja variants. We talked about, Absol, Hydreigon, Blaziken, and now Magnezone. These are really the only kind of 5 archetype packages that I would heavily consider right now in the metagame. Everything else does feel a little bit lackluster. And, again, we're a month into the meta, so, things are kind of figured out. There's not that much room for like random stuff to come out. Now, keep in mind that in 2 weeks, or a little bit over 2 weeks, we're going to be getting the next mini set, which is probably going to shake things up a little bit. My expectations for the next mini set, this is a little bit of a tangent. My next expectation for the next mini set is that we're going to get like one strong archetype, like one strong new mega Pokemon that's likely just going to be a new deck list. Depending on how flexible that card is, it might be see play in various different ways, but we can expect like one new strong deck to come into the metagame and shake things up. Maybe like a strong new like item card or tool card or supporter card that changes how the other decks are played, but that's really probably all we're going to see from this next mini set. That is if it is a mini set, but I assume it probably will be just like how Mythical Island was after Genetic Apex came out. That's sort of my expectation right now. And if that happens, then, you know, sure, we're going to have a changed metagame, but things are probably still going to be fairly similar. We'll have to see. I don't know. I don't expect the meta to change too much, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, we only get 2 weeks of this ranked season. So at the end of the day, even though the meta's been figured out, we only get a couple of weeks. So it's more of a sprint than a race, which is kind of an interesting thing because ranked has always been, you know, who can kind of continue their grind throughout the month, who has like the most time on their hands, who's like the most dedicated. Those are the people that find their way into top 1,000. Whereas this ranked season, it's only like 2 weeks long. So it's going to be more of a sprint than like a marathon, you know what I mean? Which is kind of interesting. So anyway, I really like Magnezone Oricorio right now. That's just my opinion. You might want to play it, you might not. Lastly, let's talk about the wild card for the week. Again, this is typically a spot that we reserve for a deck that's been kind of popping up a little bit in the metagame. It's been, making some waves here, but it's not like the most believable thing in the world. It might not be the most, solidified deck to enter the metagame, but it is really cool. So this is going to be the weekly wild card, and that's going to be Leafeon, Umbreon, and Mega Absol. I really like this deck, actually. And the reason I like this deck is because we're going back to like the Umbreon stuff, and Umbreon is really, really good for a lot of different reasons. Umbreon EX and then the non-EX Umbreon. Both are really strong options, and we are playing, of course, Nihilego with Poison Barb and Mega Absol, which is a combo that we've seen from time to time. But Boosted Evolution Eevee, right, with Leafeon EX or Umbreon is really, really cool, right? And I think that's an underexplored combination here. There's not that many basic type attackers in the metagame, right? But there's enough. And Dark Binding, Umbreon being able to attack on its first turn going second is crazy because of Boosted Evolution Eevee. And if we go first, we can actually evolve on our first turn into Leafeon EX and then kind of get ahead of the curve on energies with Forest Breath, and that's actually going to be a pretty relevant card here because 70 damage is KOing a lot of basics, right? It's going to KO a Froakie, it's going to KO a Dino, Chingling, whatever the case may be, and this deck does not play many item cards. In fact, the only items we're playing are Pokeball and X-Speed. So this is a really cool counter meta deck right now. We can Poison Barb that Leafeon or Umbreon. We have Nihilegos on the bench. We can attach late game for Mega Absol. Like, it's a really, really fun deck list. Super creative. I don't know who created this deck, but I've seen it see play a little bit in online tournaments recently, and it's been placing pretty well. So I wanted to showcase it in today's video because it's just a combination that we haven't really seen much so far in the past month. I don't think we've seen this really at all. And again, it's been doing really well. It kind of checks all the boxes for me to be like a really niche sort of counter meta deck that's really creative. So that's why it's the weekly wild card this week. Of course, it's playing Dark Energies and Mega Absol because every deck basically is this season. But, it is what it is. I'll be honest with you. I think Mega Absol, again, just kind of gets carried by a bunch of really other strong Pokemon that you can pair with it. You know what I mean? You guys all know my opinions about Mega Absol at this point. But, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. These are my top decks for ranked battles, plus a weekly wild card that I maybe wouldn't recommend as heavily, but it is really cool. So I wanted to show it to you guys. And yeah, that's really where it's all at. So let me just go into summary here, because we probably talked really quickly in this video as we normally do, but I do just want to summarize. I think that Mega Altaria is a great option, but it is the most popular option. So if you're playing this deck, expect to play the Mirror Match a ton. And like I said, it's not like the most well-positioned deck currently, but it is really, really strong and hyper consistent. That's why I would recommend it. And I think that this is sort of a really good alternate version for Altaria. And I think this version of the deck is kind of slept on, I'm not going to lie. The other deck that might not be the most popular deck, but I think is actually the most well-positioned deck right now is Suicune and Greninja EX. Again, matchups into Absol, really, really good. Matchups into Altaria are also really, really good. So I know people maybe don't want to play Suicune anymore, but again, this deck does operate very differently than how Suicune used to in the past. And again, it's really well-positioned. I expect more and more people to play this deck as time goes on. Here's an alternate way to play it. Again, I think that this deck, even though these are two different decks, they play extremely differently. Like, they literally probably look similar, but they're very different in how you would play them. And then, of course, we have Absol Hydreigon. This isn't a deck that I believe in nearly as much as some of the other decks, but it is high roll and it is very, it can pop off like crazy, but a lot of people are playing this. And I know that when I'm playing Suicune Greninja, like I love seeing this deck because I probably win 80% of the games against it. Like it just feels more than fine against, or Suicune Greninja feels more than fine into it. But a lot of people are playing it right now, and I think it's totally fine. Same with Mega Blaziken. In fact, I actually like Mega Blaziken more, just because I think it's better into Suicune and Greninja. Magnezone, very slept on, very good into Altaria, very good into Suicune. I would heavily recommend it. Just try to dodge the Hydreigons. Again, the metagame's condensed, but at the same time, it's healthy because a lot of these decks are strong against each other. We have this nice little web going of like the top 4 or 5 decks and how they all, you know, interact with each other. Every deck has a weakness, every deck has a strength, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And then there's the weekly wild card, which is pretty cool. So I would maybe, you know, recommend you have some fun and play this. But the other updates to ranked. Before we wrap it up here, for anybody still watching the video, which might not be that many people, they've updated the amount of points to go to Master Ball. It used to be like, what was it, like 1,450 points? Now it's only like 900. And I think the only change there is that for the people that are starting at Pokeball or Great Ball or whatever, they just have to win way less games to get to Master Ball, which I think is a really good change. And the reason why that's a good change is because the whole point of ranked is to get to Master Ball and then climb. Like it shouldn't be like you get to Master Ball and then you stop playing. It doesn't make any sense because it's so easy to get to Master Ball. And sure, you max out on your rewards in terms of like the amount of packs or hourglasses you get. But the whole point of ranked is to climb as high as you can in Master Ball, right? And that's where all of the best players are. That's where all of the decks become meta decks. So if you hit Master Ball, don't stop playing, continue to play. But this new ranked update has reduced the amount of points it takes for you to go all the way from 0 to get to Master Ball, which again, I think was a really good change just for how ranked is kind of supposed to be played. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. We'll go live pretty soon here. Stop hating on me for playing Suicune and Greninja. It's a good choice. It's not even nearly the most played deck right now. It's like the 3rd or 4th most played deck. So don't hate on me for it. But if you do, that's fine. I don't really care either way. Yeah, that's the video. There it is. Play in the Pocket Meds tournament tomorrow, by the way. Go play in it. Let's move the metagame forward. See if anything crazy happens. Who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Go play. Go register. All right. Goodbye. Have a good one. Bye.